I never believed in ghosts. I'm a 34-year-old software engineer living in Toronto, and I only trust code, data, and things I can prove. But ever since I bought the old house at 47 Oakwood Crescent in Hamilton, everything I believed in has started to crumble. The story really begins with a real unsolved case from 1998, the one the Hamilton police still haven't officially closed. They called it The Woman Who Vanished Between the Walls. The house was a two-story bungalow built in 1957. The price was suspiciously low, only $289,000 Canadian dollars, because the previous owner sold it in a hurry after a divorce. When I viewed it, the real estate agent gave an awkward smile and said, "It's just an old house. Definitely no ghosts or anything." I laughed and signed the papers the same afternoon. I moved in on October 12, 2025. It was a cold, damp Ontario autumn, and red leaves covered the front yard. I only brought 2 suitcases, my laptop, and my cat Shadow. The first night was completely normal. I slept well on my new bed. But on the third night, I woke up at exactly 3:17 a.m. because of a strange sound. It sounded like someone walking slowly across the attic. Except this house doesn't have an attic. The blueprints clearly show only 2 floors, and my bedroom ceiling is flat drywall. I lay there frozen, heart pounding, listening. The footsteps stopped. Then came a very faint breathing sound, almost inaudible, like someone standing right above the ceiling and breathing through a crack. I turned on the lights, grabbed a flashlight, and went upstairs. Nothing. Just an empty bedroom and a dark hallway. I told myself it was probably the wind or old pipes. I went back to bed. The next morning, I Googled 47 Oakwood Crescent Hamilton history. The first article I found made my stomach drop. Woman missing since 1998, police believe she may have been hidden inside the walls of her own home. Her name was Eleanor Voss, 29 years old. She lived alone in this exact house. On August 17, 1998, Eleanor called her mother and said, "There's someone else in the house with me." The call ended abruptly. Police found her car still in the garage, her wallet on the kitchen counter, but Eleanor had completely vanished. No signs of forced entry, no blood, no foreign DNA. They tore open walls and dug up floors twice over 2 years. They found nothing. The case remains open, presumed dead. I read it with a cold chill. The house I had just bought was the exact place where Eleanor Voss disappeared 27 years ago. I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence. Hundreds of people had lived here since 1998. But from that moment, the strange things started happening more frequently. Every night between 3:12 and 3:27 a.m., I would hear footsteps above the ceiling again. Not every night, but often enough that I couldn't sleep well. Sometimes I also heard faint whispering, not clear words, just a sound like wind through a crack, but it sounded like a woman's voice calling someone's name. I installed 4 wide-angle security cameras inside the house. On the first night they recorded, I reviewed the footage. Nothing. Just darkness. But when I slowed it down to 3:19 a.m., I saw a very faint shadow moving behind the living room wall. It wasn't a trick of the light. It moved slowly, as if someone was walking inside the space between the 2 layers of wall. I started digging deeper. I contacted a retired private investigator named Harlan Reed who had worked on Eleanor Voss's case in 1998. He agreed to meet me at a coffee shop nearby. Mr. Reed was around 70, with sunken eyes. When I told him about the footsteps and the shadow on camera, he stayed silent for a long time before saying, "Eleanor didn't disappear. She was trapped inside the house. And maybe she's still there." He handed me an old file. Inside was the original 1957 architectural drawing of the house. There was a strange 60 centimeters wide gap between the master bedroom wall and the exterior wall, running the full height of the house. The architect called it dead space for insulation. The police in 1998 never fully demolished it because they were afraid the whole structure would collapse. Mr. Reed looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Many people who lived here after 1998 heard crying coming from inside the walls. Some even saw a pale white hand reaching out from the old vent. They all moved out within 6 months. You're the 9th person I know who bought this house since 2000. I forced a laugh and said I didn't believe in ghosts. Mr. Reed just shook his head. It's not a ghost. It's something worse than a ghost. I went home feeling heavy. That night, for the first time, I heard knocking. The knocking came from the wall right behind my bed. It wasn't pipes. It was human fingers knocking. I pressed my ear against the wall and heard it clearly. 3 short, long, 3 short. Like Morse code. I recorded it on my phone. The next morning I played it for a friend who works as a sound engineer. He turned pale and said, "That's not mechanical. That's a person knocking. And they're knocking from inside the wall." I started losing sleep. Every night I kept all the lights on and sat in the living room working on my laptop. My cat Shadow began acting strangely. He would sit staring at the same corner of the wall, growling with his fur standing up. On the 19th day after moving in, I decided to knock a small hole in the upstairs hallway wall, right where the old vent was. I only made a 20 centimeters x 20 centimeters opening. Inside was a pitch black space that smelled of mold and something that smelled disturbingly like old human hair. I shone my flashlight in. The beam hit something white floating in the darkness. It was a long-sleeved white dress from the 90s, still with all its buttons, but the collar had dark gray stains that looked like dried blood. I stepped back, heart racing. The dress was hanging there as if someone invisible was still wearing it. I didn't dare touch it. I took photos and taped the wall back up. That night, for the first time, I heard crying. It was the sound of a woman crying. Not loud, not screaming. Just quiet, suppressed sobbing, like someone trying to hold it in but failing. The crying came from the exact spot in the wall I had opened. I sat in the living room all night with every light on, blasting music through my headphones to drown it out. But the crying still came through. The next morning I called Mr. Harlan Reed and told him everything. He only said one sentence before hanging up. "You woke it up. Now it knows you're here." I no longer thought this was an ordinary ghost story. This was an unsolved real crime, and I was living right at the crime scene. And whatever was inside the wall was still alive. The days after I found the white dress inside the wall became a blur of paranoia and exhaustion. I barely slept anymore. Every night I sat in the living room with all the lights on, my laptop open, pretending to work while my eyes kept darting toward the hallway. Shadow, my cat, refused to go upstairs anymore. He would hide under the couch and only come out to eat when I carried him. I started documenting everything. I created a folder on my computer called Oakwood Evidence. Inside were photos of the dress, audio recordings of the knocking and crying, and time-stamped notes of every strange occurrence. On the night of November 3rd, something changed. It wasn't the usual 3 knocks. This time it was one extremely loud bang, like someone had slammed their fist against the inside of the wall just inches from where my head would have been if I were lying in bed. The sound was so violent that a small piece of drywall dust fell from the ceiling. I jumped up, heart hammering. For the first time, I felt real anger mixed with fear. I grabbed a hammer from the toolbox and walked straight to the wall where I had previously made the small hole. "I know you're in there," I said out loud, my voice shaking. "If this is some kind of sick joke, it's not funny anymore." Silence. Then, very clearly, I heard a woman's voice whispering from inside the wall, not through a vent, but directly behind the drywall. "You? Finally? See? Me?" The voice was hoarse, broken, like someone who hadn't spoken in decades. It wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. I dropped the hammer. My legs felt weak. I recorded the voice on my phone with trembling hands and immediately sent the file to Mr. Harlan Reed. He called me back within 5 minutes. His voice was grave. "Listen to me carefully, son. Do not open that wall any further. Do not talk to it again. And whatever you do, do not sleep in that bedroom tonight." I asked him why. He hesitated for a long time before answering. Because in 1998, Eleanor Voss wasn't the only one who disappeared in that house. Her husband, Daniel Voss, was never found either. The police assumed he ran away after killing her. But I always suspected something worse. Something that feeds on the living. That night I slept on the couch in the living room with every light on and the TV playing loudly. Around 3:40 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps, but this time they weren't above the ceiling. They were coming from inside the hallway, walking slowly toward the living room. I sat up, frozen. Shadow was growling from under the couch. The footsteps stopped right at the entrance to the living room. Then I saw it. A pale, thin hand with long fingers slowly emerged from the darkness of the hallway, gripping the doorframe. The skin looked almost translucent under the bright lights. The nails were broken and dirty. The hand didn't move further. It just stayed there, holding the frame as if the person attached to it was too afraid, or too weak, to step into the light. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. After almost a full minute, the hand slowly retracted back into the darkness. The footsteps retreated down the hallway and faded. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning I did something stupid. I went back to the small hole in the upstairs hallway wall and shone my brightest flashlight inside again. The white dress was gone. In its place, pressed against the inside of the drywall, was a single Polaroid photo. It looked old, from the late 90s. In the photo was a young woman with long brown hair, smiling at the camera. Behind her, barely visible in the shadows of the room, stood a tall, thin figure with no face, just a dark blur where the head should be. On the bottom white border of the Polaroid, someone had written in shaky blue ink, "He is still here. Don't let him see you." My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the photo. I carefully pulled it out. On the back, in the same handwriting, was another message. "Tell my mother I'm sorry. I never meant to leave her alone." It was signed, Eleanor. I called Mr. Reed again, voice breaking. He listened to everything and then said something that made my blood run cold. Daniel Voss never left the house. He built a false wall in 1996 after he started hearing voices. He was trying to trap something, or someone. Eleanor found out what he was doing. That's why she called her mother that day. She never got the chance to escape. He paused, then added quietly, "You need to leave that house today. Some things in there don't want to be found. And once they know you've seen them, they start following you home." I didn't listen to him. Instead, I did the worst thing possible. That afternoon, I rented a small sledgehammer and began systematically knocking holes along the dead space in the upstairs hallway. I told myself I was looking for answers. In reality, I think I was looking for Eleanor, or whatever was left of her. After breaking open almost 4 meters of wall, I found something that made me vomit on the floor. Inside the narrow space between the walls was a makeshift living area. There was a dirty mattress, empty water bottles, old food wrappers from 1998, and dozens of Polaroid photos taped to the inside of the drywall. Every single photo showed Eleanor, but in each one she looked progressively more terrified and emaciated. In the final photos, she was staring directly at the camera with hollow eyes, her mouth open in a silent scream. And in the background of every photo, the same faceless dark figure was standing closer and closer. The very last photo was different. It showed Eleanor lying on the mattress, eyes closed, looking peaceful for the first time. Written on the bottom in fresh ink that looked only days old, were the words, "Thank you for opening the wall. Now I can finally leave." Below that, in different handwriting, much darker and more aggressive, "But he can't." At that exact moment, all the lights in the house went out simultaneously, even though it was still daytime. I stood there in complete darkness, covered in drywall dust, holding the last Polaroid. Then I heard heavy footsteps coming up the stairs. Not soft like Eleanor's. These were heavy, deliberate, angry. And they were coming straight toward me. I ran. I don't remember how I got out of the house. The next thing I knew, I was standing in the front yard in the pouring rain, gasping for air, still clutching the Polaroid photo. My phone was ringing. It was Mr. Reed. I answered with a shaking voice. Before I could say anything, he spoke first, his tone urgent. "Whatever you just did, it's too late now. Both of them are awake. And one of them wants to leave with you." I looked down at the Polaroid in my hand. The photo of Eleanor had changed. She was no longer lying peacefully. She was standing right behind me in the picture, smiling. And the faceless figure was no longer in the background. It was standing directly behind Eleanor, one hand resting on her shoulder. But its empty face was now turned toward the camera, toward me. And it was smiling too. I stood barefoot in the pouring rain, staring at the Polaroid photo that had just changed in my hand. Eleanor was no longer lying on the mattress. She was standing directly behind me in the image, smiling with empty eyes. And the faceless figure was no longer in the background. It was right behind her, one hand resting on her shoulder, its blank face now turned toward the camera, smiling at me. The rain soaked through my clothes, but I couldn't move. My phone was still ringing. Mr. Harlan Reed's name flashed on the screen. I answered with a voice that didn't sound like mine. Mr. Reed, it changed. The photo changed. He didn't waste time on questions. Listen to me very carefully. Get in your car right now. Drive away from that house and do not look back. Do not go back inside for any reason. Burn that photo if you can. And whatever you do, do not let it follow you. I looked at the house. All the lights were still off, but I could see movement behind the upstairs window. A silhouette. Two silhouettes. One small and thin. One tall and wrong. I ran to my car, started the engine and drove. I didn't stop until I reached a 24-hour diner on the highway toward Toronto. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the coffee they brought me. I sat there for hours, staring at the Polaroid on the table. The image kept changing every few minutes, slowly, like a developing photo in reverse. Eleanor's smile grew wider. The faceless figure moved closer to her, and closer to the edge of the frame. At 6:47 a.m., the photo finally stopped changing. Now it showed only me, standing in my own living room, looking terrified. Behind me, both Eleanor and the faceless figure were standing side by side, their hands on my shoulders. Below the image, new words had appeared in fresh ink. Welcome home. I threw the photo into the diner's trash can and drove straight to a hotel. I paid cash for 3 nights and didn't leave the room for 2 days. I ordered food delivery, kept all the lights on, and watched the news on mute. On the 3rd day, I made the mistake of checking my security camera app, the one still connected to the 4 cameras inside 47 Oakwood Crescent. The footage was still recording. At 3:17 a.m. every single night, the cameras showed the same thing, the front door slowly opening by itself. Then soft footsteps walking through the house. Then the tall, faceless figure appearing in different rooms, looking for something or someone. But the most terrifying part wasn't the figure. It was what the cameras caught on the 3rd night. At 3:29 a.m., the tall figure walked into my old bedroom and stopped in front of the mirror. It raised one hand and slowly wiped the dust off the glass. In the reflection, I saw its face for the first time. It wasn't faceless anymore. It had my face. I dropped my phone. When I picked it up again, the footage had continued. The figure wearing my face turned toward the camera, smiled exactly the way I smile, and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then it walked out of frame. The next morning, I received a text from an unknown number. The message contained only one line. Thank you for letting me out. I've been waiting 27 years to where someone new. Below the text was a photo, taken from inside my hotel room, showing me sleeping on the bed. The timestamp was 3:17 a.m. last night. I was alone in the room when that photo was taken. That was 3 weeks ago. I no longer live in Toronto. I left Canada entirely. I'm currently staying in a small town in rural Scotland under a different name. I changed my phone number, deleted all my social media, and sold everything I owned except one suitcase. But it doesn't matter. Every night at exactly 3:17 a.m., I wake up to the sound of knocking. Not from the wall. From inside my own chest. I can feel it moving under my ribs. Sometimes it knocks in the same pattern Eleanor used. 3 short, 1 long, 3 short. Last night, I pressed my ear against my own chest and listened. I heard 2 heartbeats. One is mine, fast and terrified. The other is slow, calm, patient. And it's getting stronger. I've started seeing Eleanor in reflections. She stands behind me in mirrors, smiling gently, as if she's sorry. Sometimes she mouths the words, "Thank you." The faceless figure, the one that now wears my old face, never speaks. It just watches. I know what's happening. Daniel Voss didn't trap Eleanor in the walls. He trapped something much older. Something that had been waiting inside that dead space since the house was built in 1957. Something that needed a living body to wear so it could finally leave. Eleanor was never the victim. She was the bait. And I was the new host. I don't know how much longer I can fight it. Some nights I wake up and my hands are moving without my permission. Typing messages, searching for plane tickets back to Hamilton. Last night I found a new message on my laptop, written in a document I don't remember opening. We're almost ready to go home. Thank you for carrying us. I'm writing this now because I need someone to know. If you ever see a house for sale at a price that seems too good to be true, if the real estate agent smiles too nervously, if you feel watched the moment you step inside, run. Because some houses don't want new owners. They want new bodies. And once you let them in, they never let you leave.